So Honda has finally launched the facelifted BS6 WRV last month itself. Along with some cosmetic upgrades and new features, the BS6 WRV gets new BS6 compliant petrol and diesel engines. The power figures remain same and even the gearbox options are the same. So in this video, we'll be telling you about all the changes that come on board and whether they make the WRV a better package or not. So hello guys and welcome to Car Blog India. This is your host Tarun. So let's get started with this review. The overall design language of the WRV remains largely the same as seen on the pre-facelifted one or the BS4 version. However, there are a couple of cosmetic upgrades that you can see. Starting with this, the front wheel has been given a slight refreshment over here. The slats have been changed, and there's this new LED projector headlamps, LED DRLs, as well as new LED fog lamps. Also, if you notice, the housing of the fog lamp has been revised. So there's all LED lighting over the car. If we look at from the side, you can see there's this matte grey plastic body cladding all over the WRV, which completes its crossover look. Then there's this new 16-inch dual tone alloy wheels, which also comes on the base spec S variant. The side profiles is the same as seen earlier. There's no change on the side. If you notice, doesn't the back of the WRV, the rear side portion, look very similar to the Jazz? At the back, there's no changes done except these new C-shaped LED tail lamps. So now let's check what are the highlights of this car from the inside. As soon as you get inside the cabin of the WRV, you notice that how similar it is to the Jazz. There are very few changes that you can see between the WRV and the Jazz. For instance, WRV goes with this single tone black theme for the entire cabin with silver accents on the dashboard, on the AC vents and on the gearbox. If you can see, this is the same infotainment system, the Digipad 2.0, that comes on the Jazz as well and came on the previous generation Honda City. We were expecting Honda to probably give the new infotainment system that comes on the new City, because this one is quite outdated and has a few niggles to it. If you can see on the front here, it gets a very light steering wheel, I must say, with music control systems on the left, cruise control option on the right, and telephone controls here. It gets the same 3-pod analog instrument console on the left. There's the RPM meter on the center. There's the speedometer, and on the right there's the MID, which shows the time, range, fuel economy, and the real-time fuel economy, which is Honda's classic trait of that green line and the blue line that comes over the speedometer. As we told you earlier, we are driving diesel manual variant. So here's the 6-speed manual gearbox that comes with it. If you see, there are two USB ports over here and a 12-volt power socket, which is quite convenient, I must say. There are a lot of cubby holes present inside. There's two over here, two bottle holders over here, one for the phone as well. And of course, we couldn't help but notice the touchscreen based AC control unit has also remained the same. If I might tell you, Honda has globally decided to stop this touchscreen based AC control system, and in the new City you can see the outcome of it. Lastly, I would like to say it gets this electric sunroof over here, which might not be practical, but yes, it increases the roominess of the cabin. So now I'm seated at the back of the WRV, and the first thing that I notice is how roomy and comfortable the cabin looks. Especially the addition of this electric sunroof is playing all the deeds over here. Now talking about my seating posture, well, I'm almost perfectly reclined. The seats are quite comforting, and if we talk about the knee space, you can see it's quite generous over here. There's a little bit amount of low knee support over here, and even the edge space is just about alright, just decent. If we have to seat two people inside, they will feel very comfortable, but of course, if you have to fit a third person inside the cabin, they might find it uncomfortable, and also in the COVID times, it's not allowed. And lastly, I would say, while I'm seated at the back, it does not offer a rear AC vent, which is, according to me, a big miss for Honda. So the one that we are driving now is the WRV diesel manual variant. It gets a 1.5 liter turbo diesel ID Tech engine that produces 100 PS and 200 Newton meters of peak torque, paired with a 6-speed manual gearbox. The engine and the gearbox option and the power figures also remain the same as earlier. So first, let me talk about all the changes that we have seen because of the BS6 conversion. First of all, the NVH levels have gone down considerably. The diesel clatter noise cannot be heard now if you are driving the car below 2500 RPM, of course, with the AC and the music playing. If you go above that limit, you will hear a certain amount of noise coming in while if you reach 3500 or 4000 RPM, then there's a lot of noise coming inside. But most of you won't be going to that limit in the city traffic. Then the mileage has seen a reduction by about 1.45 kmpl. We'll talk about that later. First, let's talk about how the engine performance is. This engine is quite easygoing and quite practical and not a pain to drive in the city. It gets considerable amount of low range and mid-range torque, which will allow you to shift the gears very early. By even if you are reaching just by 2000 rpm or 2000 rpm, you will find yourself shifting the gears, which is a delight when you are traveling in the city. Of course, if you reach higher speeds, it offers a longer gear ratio, and most of the times you won't feel the need to change the gears. That said, the clutch pad is very light, and with a slick gearbox of the WRV, the whole gear shifting experience is very efficient and not a pain to the knees as well as to your hand. Moving on, we have to talk about the suspension setup and the handling part as well. Let me tell you first, this is a 3.95 meter long crossover, and it is not right to pair it against other compact SUVs in the segment because the shape is completely different. While the pricing may be similar, the shape and the characteristics are completely different from that. Actually, if you have to compare the WRV, it would go against the likes of you would say Volkswagen Cross Polo or the Fiat Aventura that came earlier, and for that instance even S-Cross, only because it's also a crossover, but the S-Cross is bigger, so that's not a comparison per se. Taking the dimensions and the crossover shape in mind, the WRV handles really well. It has a very light steering wheel, which you can also operate with one hand, and even if you are parking in tight spots or taking sharp turns, you can do that efficiently with one hand. You won't be facing any trouble. However, it gets a very soft suspension setup, while the setup manages to absorb most of the minor potholes and uneven roads. But if you have to go through a sharp pothole, then you will face a slight bit of problem even while you're seated at the back or in the front seat. Moving on to the braking part, I find the bite of the brake to be quite decent, quite confident. Even if you're pressing half of the pedal, the car will come to an assuring halt. Lastly, we have to talk about its mileage because it's one of the main highlights of Honda's ID Tech diesel engine. So on the WRV, we were able to achieve 23.5 kmpl, which involved a mix of the highway cruising as well as the city traffic. And in comparison to the BS4 version, the mileage has gone down by 1.45 kmpl. But even besides that, achieving a mileage of 23 kilometers per liter is very good for a car this big. Coming to the end of this review, we have tested out the WRV diesel for 4 to 5 days in the city traffic, as well as we have done some highway cruising with it. Needless to say, it can be a fit for both the scenarios. The cabin is quite comfortable, quite practical for two people, whether you are traveling in the city or you are going on the long highway drives. We have the top end VX variant, and even if you buy the S variant, which is the base variant, you get the touchscreen system, you get the projector headlamps, you get the alloy wheels, and most of the features that come on this variant. Another highlight of this SUV, or the crossover you might say, is the high ground clearance, which is commendable for harsh potholes that we have in India. We have told you all about the advantages of this car and most of the disadvantages of this car. So if you want a car that is very simple, very practical, and you want the Honda reliability from a car, WRV is the right choice for you if you have a budget of 11 to 12 lakhs.